keep going. Okay,
Okay.
it's okay, we're good.
Got it,
Okay. We're here today at a time when home prices are out of control, rent is skyrocketing, groceries have gotten so expensive, people cannot pay for groceries and are using food banks at an all-time high. And members of our community, my patients, my neighbors, are going without the necessities of life and without the care that they need. Specifically, we're here today to talk with people who rent their homes from big corporate landlords, and we're going to talk about the struggles they are facing in their day-to-day lives. We are also here because we have a federal election happening right now, and this is a moment when our country will decide which leader and which party will protect working and middle-class families and the things they care about when times get tough. I know that there's only one leader who will do that. He gives me hope and he's on our side, and he's here today for our conversation. So thank you, Jagmeet.
Thanks so much, Erin. Or thank you, Erin. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Dr. Green. We're so lucky that we have Dr. Green running in this riding. You've shown such a passion for your community, for your patients, and I'm really proud that you're carrying the New Democrat banners. Thanks so much. And we're here to talk about housing and what it's like to rent homes. And we want to hear the story directly from someone impacted. So Erin's going to share, you're going to share your story. Erin's going to share her story. Erin is someone that lives in this community, that's lived and rented for almost 2 decades, a single mom, works hard, and her home was recently taken over by a large corporate landlord. And that corporate landlord is Brookfield Investments. And ever since Brookfield Investments took over, things have changed significantly. And I want Erin to really share that story of what it's been like. And maybe you could talk about what your life has been like now with this new corporate landlord and how that's impacted you. I know you're going to also share about how it impacted your neighbors as well. So please share your story and introduce yourself.
Yes. Thank you, Jagmeet. My name is Erin Filby, and I'm here as somebody who rents. I've lived in my home for over 18 years, and I raised my son here, and I love my neighborhood, this neighborhood. But last year, our building was bought up by Brookfield, and since then, things have been harder for us and for our neighbors. Things like getting a response when there's an issue takes longer than it did before. And that means that what starts as a small issue becomes a big issue because it feels like they don't care. The first month that they were in charge of the building, rent was taken out of my bank account twice. And I instantly called them in a bit of a panic, and it took a while for the money to go back into my bank account. And like a lot of early childhood educators, like a lot of single parents, my budget is tight, really tight. And that meant, it's embarrassing, that meant that, that the delay meant that the rest of my bills bounced. Oh. And I ended up paying insufficient funds charges. Wow. And it was expensive, and it was embarrassing, and at the time it was scary, and it was a struggle to be able to afford what we needed. And it really feels like this landlord doesn't have a sense of caring about the people who live here, about my neighbors and about our community. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
And you shouldn't feel embarrassed. Like, that was they took out too much rent. They should not have done it. It was unfair that they did that, and it put you in a really tough spot.
Yeah.
But you were saying, and it also impacted your neighbors, you were saying.
Yeah, and there are lots of us who were in the same situation, but I think about my neighbors a lot. I've been here for 18 years, and 18 years with rent control is a lot. It's a long time, but lots of my neighbors aren't nearly as lucky. And so people who have moved in the last handful of months since Brookfield took over, some of them are paying almost double what I pay for the same space. And it's not fair. It's not fair generally. It's not fair on them. It's not fair when everybody is struggling. And it's not fair because this neighborhood is so important and life-changing, and people should be able to afford to live here. It's really important.
And what would it mean for you if you're seeing your neighbors, their rent has doubled, people that have come in for the exact same places you were paying double? What would it mean for you if your place doubled?
There would be no way. I can afford it just barely. But I couldn't afford to move and stay in this neighborhood. And I love this neighborhood. It's so unfair. And I think for me and for a lot of my neighbors, there is this real fear that we'll be evicted or rent-evicted, and our home will be torn down, and they'll put 3 buildings in the same place. But we wouldn't be able to stay in the neighborhood that's so important to us and that we love. And it's a huge worry. For me and for my neighbors, this neighborhood, this community is home in a real and important way. And I don't think that Brookfield sees it that way. I think they look at our building and they look at our neighborhood and they see dollar signs and they see profit. And that's it. They don't see us as a community.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Your story, and I was saying this before, your story is sadly the story of so many people. So you talking about what you're going through, I'm sure people listening are like, that's me too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going through as well. And what you're talking about, and I think this is really important for us to put out to folks, this is really unfair.
Yeah.
It's unfair that you're living in a place, a home, where the new corporate landlord doesn't care. This is one of the biggest corporate landlords in our country. There is no excuse for them to delay in repairing issues in your home, to get it fixed in a timely way, to keep you safe, to keep your home safe, to keep your building safe. There's literally no excuse for that. They've got incredibly deep pockets. They can afford to pay for this. The fact that they're doubling rents, the fact that they're going after a hardworking mom, a single mom, that they're targeting you to squeeze as much out as possible and to squeeze your neighbors, knowing that there's nowhere else for you to go.
Yeah.
They know that, right? You know that, and they know that as well. So they think that they can squeeze you more knowing there's nowhere else for you to go, because if you were to go anywhere, you couldn't afford anywhere else. You couldn't afford anywhere else. I think it is wrong when a company has that much power over people's lives and only sees you as dollar signs and only sees you as an opportunity to squeeze as much out of as possible. I think that is morally wrong. I think it is repugnant. I think it is unfair, and we've got to fight back against that. And so my commitment to you is I want to fight back against that. But I want to point out something for folks that are listening at home. Brookfield Investments made a strategic decision. This is how they make money. They make money by going after buildings where the rents were affordable, and they see that as an opportunity to jack up rents and actually get more money out of it. The chair of Brookfield, the chair of the board is Mark Carney. The chair of the board has incredible power. Mark Carney had incredible power at that company. When you're making any decision, even as a CEO, you go to the board for approval. So Mark Carney oversaw this company as they made a strategic decision to go after people like Erin in the city of Toronto, to go and squeeze as much profit as possible out of everybody they could. That was a strategic decision that the company made, broadly speaking, and Mark Carney was the chair of that company, approved that decision. He was at the top of it. He was in a position of power. He approved that direction. And he personally profited from it as well. He made millions of dollars as the chair of this company in stock options, and we don't know how many more ways that he's made money because he hasn't disclosed his full portfolio in terms of the other assets he potentially has. There's other stakes that he has in the company. And so when he's personally invested, personally benefited, he set the direction as the chair of the board, and they chose to make lots of money hurting people. Now he could have said, you know what, we're not going to actually jack up rents as much as possible. We can still make a lot of money without doing that. We're going to respond quickly to tenants' needs. They're a big company with a massive portfolio. They could say, you know, it's going to be our policy to respond as quickly as possible. But he made that choice. What I'm troubled by is someone like that is not going to be the type of person that's going to fix the problems that Erin's going through. A person that has directed that company to squeeze as much profit out as possible to maximize revenue off the backs of people, hardworking people, is not the person that's going to solve the housing crisis in Toronto. I'm troubled by that. I'm worried about that. I think Torontonians should be worried about that as well. I think they should be deeply concerned. And I think in this election, Pierre Poilievre has said that he's going to sell off publicly owned land to the highest bidder and build homes that you cannot afford. That's no solution. And on top of wanting to cut the services you need. So I really want folks to know that, and I want you to know, Erin, my commitment is, we're not in it for large corporate landlords. We're not in it for the CEOs. We're in it for you. We're in it to fight for you. I'm going to fight like hell to make sure you don't have to live in that fear and that worry that you're going to get rent evicted. We're going to do everything possible to protect families, to protect folks, to protect real people, not the billionaires. They do not need any more protection. We need to protect actual people that are living in this city, and that's my commitment with an incredible candidate like Dr. Green. With my team, we're going to fight for you. And I'll do that in French, and then we'll take any questions you might have. Donc, un grand merci, Erin, pour partager votre histoire. Merci, Dr. Green, pour votre présence et notre candidat dans le comté. On est tellement fiers d'avoir un candidat comme vous. Ce que Erin a partagé, c'est vraiment la situation pour plusieurs personnes. Cette peur que peut-être, vous allez faire face à une rénoviction. Cette peur que peut-être votre loyer va être doublé. Cette peur qu'il n'y a pas des autres places. Il n'y a pas des autres appartements qui sont abordables. Et le fait qu'on a des géants immobiliers qui essaient d'exploiter les gens dans cette situation, c'est dégoûtant pour moi. C'est dégoûtant. Et ce qui est décevant, c'est le fait que Mark Carney était le président de cette entreprise. Le président décide la direction et approuve la direction de comment l'entreprise va gagner du profit. Donc, le fait qu'ils ont décidé d'exploiter les gens comme Erin, ils ont décidé de dire que on peut maximiser notre profit et ça, ils n'ont aucune concerne que si ça va jeter dehors des gens qui habitent dans ces communautés. Je trouve ça inquiétant. Je trouve ça inquiétant que Mark Carney était effectivement un dirigeant de cette entreprise. Il a décidé la direction et ils ont choisi ça. Ils ont eu le pouvoir de dire non, on ne va pas doubler les loyers, on ne va pas ignorer les gens, les locataires, on va respecter les locataires. Mais il n'a pas décidé ça. Il a décidé de prioriser les profits. Et je le trouve inquiétant. Je pense que ce n'est pas quelqu'un qui va régler la crise du logement au Canada et à Toronto. Il n'est pas quelqu'un qui va se battre pour Erin ou les gens comme Erin. Il va se battre pour les riches PDG. Et on sait aussi que le plan de Pierre Poilievre, c'est de couper les services dont vous avez besoin pour donner des gros cadeaux aux grandes entreprises. Il veut vendre nos terrains fédéraux aux riches investisseurs et il ne veut pas construire du logement abordable. Donc, finalement, mon engagement à vous, Erin, mon engagement à tout le monde, c'est je me bats pour vous. Je ne suis pas ici pour devenir Premier ministre qui aide les ultra-riches, les millionnaires, les géants immobiliers. Je veux être votre Premier ministre pour défendre vos intérêts de monsieur, madame, tout le monde. Je suis là pour vous. Et mon équipe et moi, les candidates comme Dr. Green et moi, on est là pour vous et votre famille. Merci. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm ready for any questions by now.
We'll now take the media questions, so you can go ahead, tell your name and your network, please.
Good morning, Mr. Singh. Christy Kirkup with the Globe and Mail. The Globe is reporting today that agents of India and their proxies allegedly meddled in the 2022 leadership election of Pierre Poilievre as Conservative Party leader. What is your reaction to this?
Well, we had heard of these allegations before, and I had said at the time, and I maintained this, just the allegations alone should have made Pierre Poilievre say, well, there's allegations of foreign interference impacting my own leadership race. If you care about the country, if you care about democracy, you would get a security clearance and find out as much as possible to protect our country. But he chose not to. And the only reason he chose not to is because he wanted to put his party and his partisan interests ahead of the country. That, to me, disqualifies you as a prime minister candidate. It's not someone that we can trust to stand up to foreign interference. And he has shown that, and this new information confirms that. He is not someone that takes the threats against our country seriously. and it is not someone that we can trust to be the Prime Minister. That's why I'm putting myself forward as a candidate for Prime Minister, someone who cares about this country, puts our country first. There are times that we're going to think about the interests of our party, and there are times when we have to put our country first. This is one of those examples, and he has failed to do so.
And as a follow-up, Mr. Singh, how concerned are you personally that India could try to interfere in this election, which a top security official has said could happen through a network of allies and proxies in Canada?
Yeah, it's a real concern. Foreign interference, as the public inquiry outlined, is a real threat. They outlined in many different ways where it's a threat, and one of the ways is particularly misinformation and disinformation as a serious concern around our elections, our democracy, and eroding or undermining our ability to have free and fair elections. So I'm worried about that, and I think we have to do everything possible as leaders of parties to prevent anything from happening. And I think on that respect, we've pointed out how Pierre Poilievre has failed, and I think that the Liberal Party has to also do everything possible to do their part. My commitment is I take any information I get and act on it as quickly as possible. And I've gotten security clearance. I will continue to get updates on anything that I can do to defend our country and our democracy.
Thank you. Next media.
Rachel Aiello, CTV News. The Conservatives are chalking the Globe story largely up to Liberal smear. You have your security clearance. Is it?
Well, we already know there's allegations. The allegations were in the publicly disclosed document that the public had access to, and at that time it said that there was information that alluded to potentially interference with respect to conservative leadership races. At that time, just the allegations alone should have prompted any leader who cares about our country to say, hey, I want to know what's going on. And the fact is, Pierre Poilievre could get to the answer of that right now. He could get security, could have months ago, could have years ago, got security clearance and found out what's going on. I think the real question is, why didn't he? Why didn't he actually get security clearance and answer that question himself? Get the information and then take the steps necessary. Oh, en français, oui. Je pense que la question, c'est, il y avait des allégations dans les documents publics, donc juste les allégations auraient forcé ou auraient encouragé Pierre Poilievre de dire oui, je dois recevoir mon code de sécurité, je veux savoir qu'est-ce qui s'est passé, je veux toute l'information pour protéger notre pays, mais il a décidé non. Et je pense que la question, c'est pourquoi? Pourquoi il n'a pas décidé de recevoir ce code de sécurité pour savoir plus de détails? Il aurait pu avoir la réponse. Est-ce que c'était une attaque ou est-ce que c'est vraiment une menace pour vrai? Il a eu la chance depuis des années de prendre d'avoir son code de sécurité et puis de savoir les détails. Mais la question vraiment, c'est pourquoi il n'a pas décidé de prioriser son pays au lieu de son parti.
Yeah, this one, can you do French and English as well, please? Former leader of your party has declared this election essentially a two-way race between the Liberals and Conservatives. Public opinion polls seem to show that that is the case. How much of that is your fault, and are you worried that the NDP might not be a real player at all in the next parliament?
Every election, this is a question that New Democrats get, so it's not like a new thing. Every election we get this question. And if people are wondering, will I give up on someone like Erin? Will I give up on fighting for people that need me to fight for them? No. Hell no. I'm never going to give up. I don't care what's going on. I'm always going to be there to fight for people. There's billionaires that have parties on their side. You know, Pierre Poilievre is going to take care of the billionaires. Mark Carney is going to take care of companies like Brookfield, where he was the president or the chair of. He's going to support those big companies to exploit people. People like Erin need someone that's going to fight for them. That's me. I'm never going to back down. I'm never going to give up. I'm always going to fight for the people that need it most. C'est une question posée pour l'NPD dans potentiellement chaque élection. Donc, ce n'est pas une question rare. Ça se passe tout le temps. Et on est prêt. Mais si la question, c'est est-ce qu'on va arrêter de se tenir debout pour les gens comme Erin, la réponse est non. Ben non. On est là pour défendre les gens comme Erin. les milliardaires, les géants immobiliers, ils ont des gens comme Mark Carney, qui était le président d'une entreprise comme un géant immobilier dans le passé. Ils ont des gars comme ça qui vont défendre leurs intérêts. Pierre Poilievre a déjà montré, il est quelqu'un qui veut défendre les intérêts des autres riches. Il était appuyé par Elon Musk parce que les milliardaires savent que Pierre Poilievre va aider les milliardaires. Donc, pour monsieur, madame, tout le monde, pour les gens qui en ont vraiment le besoin d'aide, les travailleurs et travailleuses, je vais continuer de me battre pour vous.
Thank you very much. Next, Maya.
Hi, Mr. Singh, Taria, Isri Global News. You've said the NDP's been here before, but these are some of the worst polling numbers we've seen in a long time. So, I mean, the poll out from Angus said 50% of the people who voted NDP in the last election are planning on voting Liberal. So what's your response to that? And, we've asked you this question repeatedly, but you haven't really acknowledged it. Is there a danger to not acknowledging just how unpopular the party is right now?
Well, I think this election is a really important election, and I think people need to know their choices in this election. And the job of the campaign is to make those choices clear. I'm going to take my job really seriously in this campaign. I'm going to campaign really, really aggressively to let people know the choice. And the choice is really important. We're laying out right now the troubles and the worries that Erin's going through. She's going through these worries, going through these struggles because of a company called Brookfield Investments. And the direction of that company was set by the board. Mark Carney was the chair of that company, the chair of the board that sets the strategic vision and direction of that company. And they decided, in their publicly available reports, that they looked at depressed assets. So they looked at buildings which had cheaper rent and said there's an incredible opportunity. In fact, in their own words, in their report, they said there's no better opportunity since the financial crisis of 2008 than this housing crisis to buy up buildings where people have affordable rent and find ways to squeeze more profit out of them. That was their strategic direction. This is the guy that now wants to be prime minister. I think it is very troubling that that is a person who claims to want to have solutions to the problems that people like Erin are going through. I think people need to know that that is not the guy. I'm really worried about someone like that making decisions in our country that are going to favor the companies that he worked for and are going to hurt people like Erin. I think people need to know that. I'm really worried myself about that. I'm worried about what that would mean for this country. I'm really worried about what Pierre Poilievre is proposing, to sell off our public land, to cut services, to cut healthcare at a time when people are already so worried. I think that is bad. That is a bad policy. That is a bad set of decisions that's going to hurt people even more at a time when they need help. And so people need us. They need New Democrats. So if you believe that we should fight back against the corporate greed in housing and grocery stores that is jacking up the prices in your life, vote NDP. If you believe that we have to defend our public universal healthcare system, vote NDP. If you believe that you deserve to afford your groceries, to be able to build a good life, to be able to take care of your kid, and to be able to go to work and save up for a rainy day and maybe retire with a decent pension, vote NDP. We're the only ones in it for you and your family, for working people, for middle-class families. That's us.
En français, sur les sondages, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, bien sûr. Donc, les sondages, ça monte, ça change, mais la question pour moi, c'est ce qui est important dans cette élection. C'est quoi la question dans cette élection? La question dans cette élection, c'est vraiment important. Je prends au sérieux le défi dans cette élection parce qu'on a des choix importants. Et on a une partie libérale avec le chef Mark Carney, qui était le président d'un géant immobilier. Et Erin a partagé son histoire de ce qu'elle se passe avec un géant immobilier comme Brookfield, un propriétaire, et c'est quoi les défis. Comment il veut exploiter les gens, doubler les loyers. Il ne répond pas pour les questions de réparation. Il exploite les gens et il fait mal aux gens. Donc, ça c'est important pour les gens de savoir. Mark Carney, c'est décevant, mais ce n'est pas le gars qui va régler la crise du logement à Toronto. Ce n'est pas le gars qui va se faire ça, parce que c'était le gars qui a exploité les gens, qui a profité de la crise du logement. C'est écrit dans le rapport public de leur entreprise. Pierre Poilievre veut empirer les choses. Il veut couper les services dont vous avez besoin pour donner des cadeaux aux riches entreprises, aux riches amis. Donc, il ne va pas régler les choses, il va empirer les choses. Donc, dans cet débat, dans cette élection, si vous voulez quelqu'un qui va se battre pour vous, ça c'est nous. Si vous voulez quelqu'un qui va réduire le coût de la vie, le coût de loyer, le coût d'épicerie, ça c'est nous. Si vous voulez quelqu'un qui va défendre notre système de santé, ça c'est l'NDP, NPD. Donc, votez pour nous si vous voulez quelqu'un qui va se battre pour vous.
Several unions, including those representing Boilermakers and electrical workers, have come out in support of the Conservatives. So why is the NDP losing union support to the Conservatives?
Well, just yesterday we received the support of QP National, one of the largest public sector unions in this country. And just before that, last week we received the support and the endorsement of United Steelworkers. These are the workers that are most impacted by the tariffs. These are the workers that are most directly impacted by some of the attacks of Donald Trump on our country. And these workers said, you Democrats have our back. And I'm proud of that. I'm honored and proud to have received their endorsement. And I want folks to know, when you're down and out, when times are tough, who's going to fight for you and who's going to fight for the billionaires? Who's going to put you and your family first? Who's going to say, workers need to be the ones that are the priority in this economy, not rich CEOs? The answer to that question is New Democrats. We are the ones that are going to put you first, always. Prioritize you and your family, always. We are not in it for the billionaires. We're not in it for rich CEOs. We're certainly not in it for companies like Brookfield. We're in it to fight for you against those companies that exploit you.
Merci beaucoup. On va passer. Français. Oui, en français, s'il vous plaît.
Oui. Je suis tellement honoré que hier, le syndicat qui représente un grand montant des travailleurs dans le service public, SNP, a appuyé notre parti. Je suis tellement reconnaissant et honoré par cet appui. Et avant de ça, les métallos ont appuyé notre parti. Et les métallos sont parmi les travailleurs les plus impactés par les tarifs. Et ils ont dit que c'est le NPD, c'est notre parti qui défend les travailleurs, qui défend les gens. Donc, je veux encore dire, dans cette situation difficile, avec beaucoup de précarité, beaucoup d'incertitude, il y a un parti qui toujours va prioriser les gens, qui va toujours prioriser les travailleurs et travailleuses. On n'est pas là pour défendre les intérêts des grandes entreprises, des géants immobiliers, des PDG. On est là pour défendre vos intérêts. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on va faire. Donc, si vous voulez quelqu'un qui va se battre pour vous, ça, c'est nous, l'NPD.
Radio-Canada. Je vais rebondir sur votre dernière phrase. Vous dites, si vous voulez de quelqu'un qui va se battre pour vous, avec les sondages, on doit en comprendre que peut-être que les gens ne veulent pas de quelqu'un qui peut se battre pour eux, comme avec le message que vous leur proposez. Pourquoi vous ne l'admettez pas que ça ne va pas bien au NPD en ce moment? Pourquoi ne pas tout simplement l'admettre et de dire que vous avez une pente à remonter, puis que vous allez tenter de le faire, mais qu'au moins vous pourriez l'admettre? Expliquez peut-être le contexte dans lequel on se trouve. On ne peut pas le nier. Pourquoi vous le niez?
Oh, il y a des grands défis. Je n'ai jamais dit qu'il n'y a pas de grands défis. On a des défis massifs devant nous. Aucun doute. Mais je ne vais jamais lâcher. Je suis toujours là pour défendre les gens. Et malgré les défis, ça ne me fait rien, les deux grands défis. Je suis prêt à surmonter les défis. C'était toute ma vie. Ce n'est pas quelque chose de rare. C'est normal. J'ai toujours eu des grands défis. Je suis toujours prêt à surmonter des défis. Toute ma vie, c'était la situation. Voire plus de ça, c'était toute l'histoire de notre pays. Grand défi pour les travailleurs, tout le temps. Beaucoup de pression contre les travailleurs, tout le temps. Tout le temps, les gens disent « Oh, c'est impossible d'améliorer les choses. C'est impossible d'avancer les choses pour les travailleurs. » C'est l'histoire de notre pays. Le seul moment qu'on atteint des victoires, c'est quand on se bat pour réaliser ces victoires. Quand les travailleurs et travailleuses ensemble se battent et demandent des changements, qu'on reçoit les changements. Donc, dans notre histoire, c'était l'NPD qui a réalisé tous les gains que nous sommes fiers, les valeurs qui sont chères à nous, les soins dentaires, mais historiquement, les soins de santé, les pensions, c'était nous. ensemble, avec les travailleurs, on s'est battu pour réaliser tout ça. Donc oui, on a des grands défis. On a des milliardaires et les géants immobiliers avec des grandes puissances, de gros bouts de pouvoir. Oui, c'est des grands défis, mais je vais jamais lâcher. Je suis tellement optimiste parce que j'ai hâte de défendre les gens comme Erin. C'est la raison pour laquelle je me suis lancé en politique. J'ai aucune peur des défis, j'ai aucune peur des obstacles. Je suis là pour les surmonter. Je suis là pour défendre les intérêts des gens et je vais continuer de faire ça.
Can you repeat in English, please, Mr. Singh?
Let's be clear, there's massive challenges. I've got no illusions about that. There are some serious challenges that we're up against. And working people are up against massive challenges. You got billionaires and massive corporate landlords. There are massive challenges against people. And our whole history of our country has been one where we've been faced with massive challenges, where people have been told you can't improve things, you can't get things for the worker, you can't actually improve the conditions of work, you can't improve healthcare, this is not possible, that's not possible, you can't get dental care, you can't get pharmacare, none of this is possible. We've been told that our whole lives. That's what we're up against. We're never going to give up. I'm never going to give up. I've faced challenges like that my whole life. I've never backed down. I never give up. I'm never going to let you think that in any way I'm going to be worried or afraid of a challenge. I'm not. I'm ready for the challenge. Bring it on. Any challenge, I'm ready for it. Because I'm fighting for people like Erin. Erin deserves someone to fight for them. I'm never going to back down. I'm never going to give up. You can ask me this question 100 times. I'm never going to back down. I'm never going to give up. Because I believe in what I'm fighting for. I believe in it. I know people deserve better. Mark Carney literally is a chair of a company that exploited the housing crisis to make massive profits off people's backs. That's not the guy that's going to help out Torontonians. I know that. And in this campaign, I want people to know that as well. Like, if you think you're up against a housing crisis now, and the chair of a company that said, hey, the best opportunity since the financial crisis to make money off of people in housing is the housing crisis, that's not your guy. That's not the guy that's going to fix the problem. And people need to know that. And so I think campaigns matter, and I think people ought to have a clear-eyed vision of what the choices are, and I'm going to present those choices every single day. I'm never going to back down from that. Mark Carney is a guy that's going to raise your cost of housing. That's what he's going to do to make more profits, probably for himself, but certainly for the companies that he worked for. Pierre Poilievre is going to sell off public land. That's his plan. Sell off public land to the highest bidder. That's not going to build homes you can afford. I'm here for you. I'm only dedicated to working people, to everyday families, to the middle class. I'm here for you. I'm here for people like Erin. That's who I'm fighting for.
Parfait, merci. Est-ce que maintenant, sur un autre sujet, est-ce que vous croyez, comme le Bloc québécois, que les libéraux pourraient ressortir le projet Énergie-Est des cartons, ou en tout cas, ressortir le projet Énergie-Est? Est-ce que, selon vous, c'est un projet qui peut être acceptable si la population en veut?
Donc, j'ai déjà me prononcé contre Énergie Est. Je l'ai dit en anglais et en français. Avec Mark Carney, le problème, c'est le fait qu'en anglais, il suggère qu'il est pour Énergie Est et il veut la construire. Et en français, il dit, oh non, c'est l'acceptabilité sociale. Donc, je me prononce clairement contre. Ce que je favorise, c'est des programmes comme une grille électrique à travers le pays, où on investit massivement dans une infrastructure, on connecte l'hydroélectricité, l'énergie propre, l'énergie abordable pour connecter notre pays, pour créer un climat d'industrie avec de l'énergie qui est moins chère, pour réduire le coût d'énergie pour les gens. Ça, c'est ma priorité. Ça, c'est un projet que je veux créer, je veux construire. Mais pour aucun projet d'énergie, j'ai des critères. On doit avoir l'acceptabilité sociale, on doit suivre nos règles environnementales, on doit travailler ensemble avec les partenaires autochtones. Donc, si on satisfait ces critères, ça, c'est un projet où on est ouvert.
Mais est-ce que vous craignez que avec Carney, on ramène Énergie?
Oh oui, bien sûr, parce qu'il a un double discours. Donc oui, j'ai peur de ça, parce que Mark Carney a suggéré en anglais, en effet, oui, on va aller de l'avant avec un projet comme Énergie Est. Et en français, il a comme un peu hésité de dire la même chose. Ça me montre qu'il veut cacher ses vraies intentions. Et oui, il y a une peur.
Can you now please answer this question in English, please?
Oh, yes. On energies, I've said very clearly I'm against the project. I've said it in English, I've said it in French. I just did it again. And so, yeah, that's where we stand on that project. I think it's the wrong thing to do. What I favor and what I prioritize as a national infrastructure project is an east-west energy grid where we connect the cheap, affordable, and clean electricity across the country with an east-west energy grid, creating lots of jobs and lowering the cost of electricity for people, and creating a climate that's good for industry. If we've got access to low-cost, affordable electricity readily available, then we can actually have better industry. Access to the low-cost energy is good for business, good for manufacturing, and so that's what I would favor as a nation-building project. For any energy project, though, we've got a couple of criteria before we would look at it. It's got to be it's got to be something that the public approves of. The community that it's going to happen in has to be in favor of it. It's got to respect our environmental goals and our rules. It's got to work in coordination with Indigenous communities, and it's also got to create good jobs. And if it meets those criteria, we're open to looking at it.
Merci beaucoup. We'll take the next question.
Hi there, Mr. Singh. Marina von Stackelberg with CBC Television. As my colleague mentioned, you've gotten some endorsements from union leaders, but the Conservatives are also getting support from unions. So where has the NDP gone wrong in its messaging or its platform that the party founded on Labour can no longer count on their support?
Well, I don't take anything for granted. I want to earn everyone's support, so I fight hard to earn their support. I'd ask working people, I'd ask everyday folks to look at the track record of the Conservative Party. They voted against minimum wage. Pierre Poilievre was part of the government that attacked workers' rights. He said very clearly when he became first elected as MP that he was proudly the first federally elected fellow MP to promote right to work, aka anti-union laws in Canada. So he's got a strong track record of being anti-union. He's voted against anti-scab legislation multiple times in the past. He has shown that he has voted against workers being able to have the power to fight for fairer wages. He is no friend of working folks. His track record shows that. He's a career politician, so there's a long career you can look at that he has showed again and again that he's not prioritized workers, and I think people should know that about him.
But he is getting the support of unions. So what is it that is happening that the NDP can't have that support anymore from some of these groups? Like, where do you think it is that the NDP's message is not resonating with Labour anymore?
Sometimes it's a long time ago, people there's been some gap between when Harper was in power. People might have forgotten what Harper did. But Harper, as a Conservative Prime Minister, and Pierre Poilievre, as a minister in that, a cabinet minister in that government, attacked workers, attacked unions, attacked their ability to organize. And sometimes there's a bit of a gap and people forget what happened before. And so it's our job in this campaign to remind people, this is his track record. This is what Pierre Poilievre did. Voted against minimum wage. Who does that benefit? It hurts workers and it benefits big corporations that want to exploit your labor. Why would you vote against establishing a wage for workers? It shows you're not in it for workers. So we're gonna let that be known. We have fought every single day as a party, both me as leader and historically for working people. We fought for anti-scab laws to ban scabs in our country. We got that done. We have shown you through our actions that we will always prioritize working people.
Thank you. Next media.
Hi, David Thurton, CBC Radio. Good morning, everyone. I want to ask this question to Erin. It's very nice to meet you, and thank you for sharing your story. Do you hold the Liberal leader, Mark Carney, personally responsible for the housing crisis?
Personally responsible, no, I don't. But to be involved in making profit, not just a little bit of profit, but huge amounts of money, giant Scrooge McDuck piles of money, from me and my neighbors to aim to exploit low-income buildings. Because let's be clear, if rent is low, then that's who's living in those buildings. To be able to think, yeah, that's the opportunity for exploitation that I would like to take. That's where we're making our money. I don't know if I hold him responsible for the housing crisis, but I hold him responsible for his own choices.
And just a second question to Mr. Singh. Just along the lines of housing, and I guess in the same vein, like, do you personally hold Mark Carney responsible for the housing crisis? Or is it more that he's out of touch, he doesn't hold the right perspective, or maybe he's just guilty by association?
I thought Erin's answer was incredibly powerful because he's one person. And so certainly he can't be responsible for the entire housing crisis. That would be unfair to suggest. But the chair of one of the biggest corporate landlords, and just for a bit of perspective, Brookfield Investments has like $1 trillion portfolio, something just astronomical. They are massively big. Like this is not a small player. This is huge sums of money. And to be the chair of the board in a corporate structure, that is a very powerful position. CEOs have to go to the board for approval. They have to ask for approval on the direction the company is going in. So what Brookfield says, and it's available in their public report that we shared with you, if they say, hey, great opportunity for us to make lots of money, one of the best opportunities since 2008 is this housing crisis, let's go after where the rents are lower, like they call it depressed assets, but they basically rents are lower. They are specifically saying let's exploit hardworking people that go to work every day, that work hard, that have been living in these communities, that live in these homes. Let's find ways to exploit them to squeeze as much money as possible out of them. That is a decision. That is a leadership decision. That shows you his priorities. He could have said, no, we're not going to actually squeeze them that hard. You know, we've got a responsibility to make some profits, but we're not going to squeeze them for every single cent. You know, the same way corporate grocery stores, they make profits, but they made record profits while people couldn't afford their food. And people are like, you know, that's wrong. They should be making record profits. Like, everyone understands that a company makes a profit, but to make it a strategic decision that you're going to go after, there's lots of ways for a company to make money. You could buy up buildings, you could build new buildings, you could do lots of things. But to say we're going to specifically go after some of the most affordable homes where hardworking people live and say that's where we're going to try to squeeze out as much money as possible, that's a leadership decision, and the chair of that corporation has to be held accountable for the decisions they made in that leadership position. And if that person now is saying to you, I want to be prime minister, and they're saying that the housing crisis is something they're going to tackle, I mean, I would have some serious doubts about that. And I think you should. And that's what we're saying today. That's what I'm saying today. En français, oui, oui. Oui, plus court. C'est injuste de dire qu'une seule personne est responsable pour toute la crise du logement. Non, je ne dis pas ça. Et ça aurait dû être injuste de dire ça. Mais Mark Carney était le président d'une grande entreprise. Et comment les grandes entreprises fonctionnent, chaque décision prise par le PDG doit avoir l'appui du président de l'entreprise. Donc, si le président, donc c'était Mark Carney, il a appuyé la décision stratégique de Brookfield de dire que dans une crise du logement, on va trouver du logement abordable et puis exploiter ces gens. Il aurait dû choisir des autres façons de faire des profits. Il aurait dû dire, on peut choisir de construire du logement. On peut faire des autres choses pour gagner des profits. Mais il a choisi, par exprès, d'exploiter les gens qui travaillent fort, les gens qui travaillent chaque jour pour gagner une vie. Il a décidé de les exploiter pour gagner des profits massifs. Pas des petits profits, mais des profits massifs. C'était son décision et on doit rendre compte de ça. Et il a eu le pouvoir et il a décidé cette direction et maintenant il dit que je veux devenir Premier ministre. Je dis ce n'est pas le gars qui va régler les problèmes dans la vie des gens s'il a décidé d'exploiter les gens quand il était le président d'un géant immobilier.
Last question.
Did you want to add
Saying,
something? Sorry, I was going to add one quick, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just noticed that.
Yeah. On the question of whether Mark Carney is out of touch, yes, of course. I mean, he's a lifelong banker, financier. Has he met with people like Erin? As a physician who lives and works in this community, I've met with hundreds of people like Erin. People who are struggling to pay their rent, people who have been evicted because they can't pay their rent or because their homes have been under renovation and they've been rent-evicted. And I have had patients who have become homeless as a result. people who are working full-time and have become homeless because of rent eviction. I would challenge Mark Carney to meet with some of those people. As someone who's never been elected to office, who's never had to campaign, who's never held a job where he meets with real-life, everyday people who are experiencing these challenges, I would say he is out of touch.
That's a great point. Thanks for coming. That's good.
And Mr. Singh, David Baxter with
hey.
the Canadian Press. We've talked a lot about what Mark Carney and Brookfield have done during this press conference, and you said you will fight for people like Erin. But how specifically would an NDP government fight for people like Erin in this situation?
Yeah, we're going to have more announcements on housing throughout the campaign. We really wanted to focus on this today. We had an announcement on housing yesterday, and we laid out one concrete step for what we could do to build homes that are affordable. And a quick recap of that, we would use all the federal land that we own across this country and build 100% affordable homes. And why I stress 100%, because the current plan of the Liberals is they're selling that federal land. I would keep the federal land. We should be the owners of that public land that's owned by the people. We should keep it and work with community organizations to build 100% homes that people can actually afford to rent, to own. That would be our plan. The Liberal plan is they're selling off that land, and as a requirement, most of the homes on that land will be unaffordable. That to me is not a good housing plan. To use our own federal land that we own, to sell it off to private developers and then say most of it's going to be unaffordable, that's a bad plan. Our plan is we own the land. Like, what are the three things you need to build homes? You need land, you need workers, and then you need some funds. Well, we've got the land. We've got a plan to train the workers, and then we've got funding at the federal level we can unlock to work with community groups to build homes that people can actually afford. That's our plan that we announced yesterday, and we'll have more plans around how we can fight for people like Erin and how we can build a more equitable, fair housing market that actually works for people, not for billionaires.
And last year, the NDP did introduce legislation aimed at preventing corporate landlords from buying up affordable housing. Would that be something that's part of this plan going forward, or is that not going to make the cut this go around?
Oh, I'm not supposed to give away my announcements before we make the announcements, but you can be rest assured that we have not wavered on our values. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you
I gotta
very much.
save the announcement for another day, you know.
That concludes the press conference. Ça met fin à la conférence de presse. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Oh my goodness, I had shivers when you gave your answer.